All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA DFS live stream. We have Chuck here with you guys, and I want to start it out with a question for Chuck, okay? Because if you guys watched the showdown video from, what was it, the Pacers-Lakers game, the in-season tournament, me and JR pretty much, I thought we crushed it content-wise. I know a lot of people had success as well. Now, me personally, I don't know if I mentioned this on the live stream or not, I've had an issue of pretty much getting done with the live stream and liking the content that we had and wanting to jam in more and more lineups. I've won 4 GPPs, maybe 5. Anyways, they're small contests because they always seem to be the ones in which I jump on late. What would be your approach to alleviate that? Because it's still a good day, don't get me wrong. The contest I reserve at the start of the day, is it just maybe enter more contests at the start of the day? The issue that I have is building by hand. It becomes more difficult because you have all these thoughts, and to me, it's harder to go back and update lineups. To me, it's easier to make a new lineup. So I'm just kind of curious as to kind of what are your thoughts, or is it just fine? Like it's working, no need to change it.
Well, so there's something about, I've seen a lot of people on Twitter, some top players talking about don't start going into the slate too early because you might start to develop, I don't want to say biases, but you're just, I'm in on this guy, and then some news comes and it makes that guy still the same play, but other plays become better, but you're stuck on that first guy because you started building early. So what I do is I just make a dummy lineup the night before and I go through every team. I build it as if like the slate's going to start in a few minutes and then I enter it. But luckily, usually by the next day, there's enough news where that lineup, like my main lineup is just nowhere close to my dummy. And so I build that to reserve the rest of the lineups. And as far as just, entering contests, like, it hasn't really happened in the NBA too much, but let's say like the first big contest fills and maybe if you're playing on DraftKings, the $1 and the $4, they put up a second one with a smaller prize pool, just less entries. Those contests are always typically better to enter for most players. Just it's less lineups to compete with. Typically the winning lineup scores less points than the winner in the original big one. And so that's an easy way. And then just overall contest selection, we've been talking in the Discord a lot about 100 mans on FanDuel. I think those are probably the best bankroll builders. It's just you're competing with 100 players. It only pays 12% versus the typical 20% in most large field GPPs. But over time, it just your expected ROI in those contests should be higher. I mean, in the large contests, you really have to win a couple of seasons in order to show a good ROI. And I will say, like my specialty is large field GPPs. That's what I typically do best in. And I mean, like I said, you only have to win a few a season to have a really good season. It's just a lot more days of, slightly negative returns. And it's rare that I full brick a slate. But like if you break even on an NBA day, that's a pretty good day. It just, we move on to tomorrow. Maybe you got a lot of stuff right. You just didn't have the right combination. Yeah. And so I will say one thing I struggle with is, so what I've been trying to focus on more is the 3 maxes over on DraftKings, small to medium buy-ins. And I think those are really great because if you have a couple contrarian takes, then that's usually enough to kind of, put you kind of near the top. There's going to be less combinations in the whole contest. And it's just my ROI is higher in those than it is in the large field GPPs. It's just, I don't have that chance for that large first place score, but I mean, you're only going to win 1 or 2 large first place scores a season typically anyway. So
is that more of a situation where, let's say you said you do a dummy build at maybe the day before, how often are you going up until a lineup lock? Is it every single slate or is it most slates?
In terms of like editing my exposures.
Yeah.
Oh, I usually don't upload my CSV until 59, like 1 minute before. I'm constantly like trying to adjust things and just get it exactly the way I want it. And then, if like late news breaks, sometimes a model doesn't update immediately. Yeah. And you just kind of have to eyeball it.
Mm-hmm. I gotcha. Yeah, I just think that's a good point of conversation. It was kind of a good kind of stopping and starting point with the in-season tournament, just kind of I think a good part to recap on. But in general, I think I want more showdown slates, one game slates that worked out well. It was Isaiah Jackson and TJ McConnell that worked out on that slate, which was nice.
I will say this season I haven't had as much success on the main slates as I have the last 2 years, but I'm crushing the shorter slates, some of the turbos and the 2 game night slates, and then the nightly showdown. Doing pretty well in those, and so you can usually like you don't have to invest that much in those, especially just the 20 max $1 and one.
Hmm.
I think those are really good for if you don't have a larger bankroll to just enter 20 lineups in those and just, really work on them. We have time. We usually have the news by then. There's not going to be any late swapping typically. So I think that's a good thing to focus on is the shorter slates and the showdowns, particularly on DraftKings.
And I think that there actually is like a bigger edge for a lot of those just because not many people are really paying attention to. And I can kind of tell that could actually be a slate like today where there's 2 NFL games going on right now. It's Monday games, primetime games. I can tell by the viewers that right now this could be a pretty big edge slate for us NBA wise as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. Looking at it right now. Do you have any initial thoughts for this slate? Because we have a ton of news, tons of situations. Looking at the ownership, nothing too crazy.
Yeah, so we have a gigantic slate. So even before I looked at anything, I mean, there's 13 games today. Everyone's playing, and so I already thought it was going to be a disaster. And then players started getting ruled out, and it's funny when I was building my dummy, the first player I went to go put in my lineups was James Wiseman because Duran's out and Bagley was projected to be out. He got ruled out already, but luckily DraftKings priced him up to like 5K, so he's not even on my radar right now. But we have a lot of min price centers, and so kind of similar to a few of the previous slates that we've had. I think we either just want to go cheap at center or pay up for Joel Embiid specifically, and Joel Embiid's questionable, but Nick Nurse, one of the beat reporters, reported that Nick Nurse was talking as if Joel Embiid's in. He is still a game time decision, so it's not 100%, but I did build as if Embiid was in. And then just real quick, the only other like top center I was getting was Sengun, maybe a few shares of Jokic, but I think the cheap centers are going to be probably the most important thing to get correct tonight.
Yeah, and kind of to your point, James Wiseman, at least on FanDuel, I think he's firmly in play, but he is he's tough to get to simply because a lot of people are probably going, maybe you got Richards pulling in some ownership, a good value play, probably going in Embiid and whatnot. So definitely interesting there on FanDuel as well. Cheap center-wise, let's kind of just start there, I guess. Richards is pulling in as a good value. I find that to be interesting. Joachim Bertel cheap. Orlando Robinson has been playing well. Gets a very good matchup against Charlotte. He's not pulling in insane amount of ownership, 2 and 3%. Isaiah Stewart actually is pulling in a bunch of ownership, which to me seems like a mistake. I don't know. Like,
it seems kind of hopeful, I think.
Yes.
For reference, Isaiah Stewart's points plus rebounds today was at 18.5, and I did hit the over, but even if he hits the over, that's still not going to give us, like, if he just barely hits the over, that's still not going to give us value on either of these prices. Now he does have power forward eligibility, which is great. But yeah, he's not even chalky, but it's not really a spot that I'm getting too much in my first builds.
It's one of the most fascinating things that he kind of just sucks right now, for lack of a better term. Is it really just Bogdanovich being back? Like, to me, that's what it seems like. It's just the usage, the role that we would want him to have has just not been there like you would want it to be.
Like, so he's been bad all season, and intuitively you wouldn't think that Bogdanovich being back really hurts Isaiah Stewart that much, but it is. And it just, I mean, he hasn't been bad. Of course, it's possible that he has a better game than most, but even then his ceiling, I don't think it's high enough to where we want to play him over some of the other options we have, even at that power forward spot.
And I will say, just to touch on it again, like, we have Wiseman there. Wiseman can get into foul trouble, and then Stewart would have to play the center against the Pacers, and it's a good matchup against the Pacers. But I'm looking at that ownership on FanDuel, I'm just like, I don't want to eat that chalk, specifically on FanDuel in a game that could be a blowout as well. Like, I think we can probably bank on Wiseman in some capacity getting into foul trouble, and maybe that leading to more minutes for Stewart, but I don't think that's enough for me to love it. And looking at like the value, he does rank out as a good value play, but we can see we got Robinson right there as a good pivot on both sides. Okonkwo is okay. Where the heck is Hartenstein? I didn't see him at all, but I didn't see his price yet. And then we have Mike Muscala popping up as kind of chalk at center. Let's hear your thoughts on that.
So I forgot about Mike Muscala before. Like I said, like I went in the slate and I had an idea of where I thought my exposures are going to end up, and I
Yeah.
hit build, and it's just he's min priced. And if you've been following our content for NFL, last week we said just jam in Zach Moss. It's not, and he didn't perform well, but he was in every winning lineup. And then yesterday it was Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I don't think Clyde Edwards ended up in the winning lineup, but the point is that it's just he's been priced, and it's more what he allows you to do with the rest of your lineup if he just has an okay game. And then if he, puts up a huge game like high 20s, even low 30s, then I mean, you just kind of are going to have him.
What was we had a similar situation to this. It was like a bad center play, and I don't think he dominated. Was it Richards earlier? I think
Richards, Orlando Robinson, maybe
both of them
min
probably.
priced.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
But there's one that was a very similar situation. Whatever, they ended up putting like 18 points, and it was more than like you were definitely happy to play them at that. And I think that's what we're expecting out of him. Now, I do want to get your thoughts on Robinson against Cleveland. Only played 20 minutes. That game was a bit of a blowout against Charlotte. I would think that he would get some good minutes, and I'm just shocked at his ownership. Projected to get 28 minutes, good matchup against Orlando, coming in as a good value. Only 2% and 3%. Is that a mistake, or is that just me probably liking the matchup a little bit more than I should?
So the thing is, there's 13 games today. There's 26 starting centers, and we're probably interested in almost half of them. And with Orlando Robinson specifically in the last game, he picked up 3 early fouls. I think all 3 of his fouls were in the first half. Okay. And so he lost his second rotation. And then in the second half, he played his normal rotation, but Kevin Love came in and dominated. And I don't think Orlando Robinson came back in the game. So he probably lost 2 rotations in that game. I think his price is pretty reasonable, especially at the ownership. We have a ton of other centers we're interested in, but if we're making 150 or even 20 lineups, I feel like I'm going to want to have at least a couple shares of Orlando Robinson. It just, especially he's playing Charlotte, and he has the potential to, like, he put up 45 fantasy points 2 games ago, like that. He has that ceiling. And even if he doesn't he put up 34 a few games ago, if he gets something like that, then it's great. But it's more so what the other centers don't do versus what Orlando Robinson does.
So let's touch on some of those other potential centers. So we know that Evan Mobley is out. Are we looking at Jared Allen as a pretty good play? I didn't see them popping up too much on the model, which I was a little bit shocked by. 1% owned on DraftKings, 10% on FanDuel. Pretty much the same price across. Yeah, the model is pretty much saying he's an okay play, but not exactly one you need to go out of your way to play.
Yeah, I really hate it when there's a good price center, especially in a situation where his teammate's out, and Jared Allen's a perfect example. But I talk about this, like, if we have to scroll down even one scroll of the wheel to see him undervalue when he's not expensive, it's the model telling us that he's really not that great of a play. And I just want to point out Nick Claxton is basically the same price on both sites, pulling 0% ownership against Sacramento, and I think that's the better spot than Jared Allen, and the model kind of agrees to.
I would agree with that as well. Both of them are kind of fine, I would say, but lower ownership, I don't really get that. I know he hasn't been getting a ton of minutes, but he's still, if he gets 28, he should be able to crush. Now, I do want your thoughts on the chalk of Isaiah Hartenstein, 20% and 50% projected owned. To your point, we do have to scroll a bit to get to him, and this is just centers. Like, this isn't on the full slate. I would have thought he would have been popping up much more than that. Is this a situation where on a big slate like this, do we need to eat the chalk here? Because it feels like we might not need to. I don't know. I'm hesitant to not play him, to be honest with you.
So I don't know if it's that he's just slightly, like, his price is good, definitely, with Mitchell Robinson out, and Mitchell Robinson's going to be out for like a month or two. So we're going to have to, this Hartenstein versus Jericho Sims situation is probably going to come up every single time the Knicks play, depending on what their prices are. But so I thought Hartenstein was going to be a staple in my lineups, and I actually got 0% until I made some adjustments. Getting all the Jericho Sims, it's just he's 3K, and I will say I think Jericho Sims has played less than 30 minutes total this entire season. And we don't have a confirmed starting lineup, but this is what Tibbs did the last time Mitchell Robinson was out. Jericho Sims started, but I don't know if. Like the ownership on DraftKings, 21%. It's not bad. 44% on FanDuel. He has power forward eligibility, so I get that. But the model is telling us that we can pretty comfortably fade him, and I'm not going to disagree with that.
I will say, if we are not playing him, I think Randall is kind of a very logical play. He's already locked into the minutes. Does he get a little bit more? Probably not, but maybe gets a couple more rebounds that he typically wouldn't get. So all in all, I kind of like the ceiling that Randall could present. I mean, look at this game log, 55, 47, 56, 62. I don't know. I think he'd just be locked into a very safe game already, and so I don't mind him.
I like that a lot. And the model's telling us that Randall's a better points per dollar play than Hartenstein, even though his price is almost twice what it is on DraftKings.
And then just real quickly, if Sims does start, who would you want more of, him or Muscala?
So right now, Muscala is my highest exposed center, followed by Joel Embiid. So it's Muscala. He's in almost every single lineup I have. I think I'm going to adjust that because it's kind of uncomfortable. But again, for min price, he's definitely the better play than Sims. He has a higher ceiling, more potential to play more minutes. And so he's in the bulk of my lineups. And then there's a huge drop off in exposures down to Joel Embiid at 30%, Sims at 30%, Nick Richards at 30%, Sengun at 25%. And then I am mixing in some Gallinari. I have to decide if I'm going to set a rule, one of Muscala or Gallinari. It just, on a shorter slate, I wouldn't care. But on this huge slate, I don't think they're really going to share the floor together. It's going to be one or the other. And so even though they're both cheap, I think I might set the rule one or the other and then just make sure I get a few shares of Gallo just in case something weird happens.
I was going to ask about Gafford as a potential pivot. So one player that you mentioned in passing, Nick Richards, you got him about 30% projected ownership, which is about what he is on DraftKings. Very cheap on DraftKings compared to FanDuel. Going against Miami, not the typical Miami, obviously with Bam and Tyler Hero out. Is he someone that you like? Like obviously you're getting him at 30%, but like how much do you like him? Very good value projection. I guess let me rephrase that. So we got Richards as a good value. We got Muscala as a good value. I mentioned some of the other plays. And then you have Joel Embiid that you want to pay up for. Rank those three. So Richards, Muscala, and Embiid right now, like priority-wise.
Just using the model, I mean, Nick Richards is the top value on DraftKings overall. Joel Embiid is the third best center value at max price, which just tells us to play Joel Embiid. And then even though he's min priced, Mike Muscala is not. I mean, he's in the middle of like the first page, projected for 22 minutes. The thing is, if he plays if we had him projected for say 26, 27, 28 minutes, his value score would be a little bit higher. And so I would just use a model order, Nick Richards, then Embiid, then Muscala, but it's just Muscala really allows us to, it's just so much flexibility with building the rest of our lineup.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay, so let's go ahead and pivot on into forwards unless you want to touch on any other center plays.
I'm just going to mention Sengun. He was popping for me, but he's not really popping very well in the model, but we have all the value. We can basically play whoever we want. And it's, again, I think we really just want to pay up or pay down at center. I will say that Hartenstein and Nick Richards are the same price, and the model says it's Nick Richards, not even close. So it's something that I'm going to be keeping in mind when I finish my builds after the stream.
Is the Sengun play just a matchup thing against San Antonio earlier? 58 fantasy points just went off against them.
Yeah, San Antonio is a team we do like targeting centers against, and we have all the salary to pay for whoever we want. Now, there's some good plays at other positions too, but like I said, we have all the salary to play with today.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move on into the forwards, then we'll get into the guards here. Again, if anyone has any questions, make sure to get those in, or comments. We like those as well. But looking at the forwards, are there any starting points for you forward-wise today that you love? Because right now I'm looking at the ownership, not too much chalk. I mean, Jabari Smith chalk, Joe chalk, but it's pretty spread out.
That I love, unfortunately, no. I do like, there's a few guard payups that I really like, but like Dante Exum this is kind of max price for Dante Exum, right? 5,700 and 6K. He's the top of the value, and with Kyrie Irving out, I mean, we should be projecting him for 31 plus minutes. Derek Jones is number 2 there. I like getting to Derek Jones on DraftKings at least. FanDuel, his price is a little bit higher than we'd like to pay, but at 2%, I don't mind taking shots there either. But it's really interesting to see these two as like the clear top values on DraftKings. Are you into Dante Exum today?
For me, it's probably going to be one of the two. I don't know if I want to go in on both of them, just because I personally want to get to Luka a little bit more. Like you said, you're getting to Embiid. I might get to Luka just so I can play the other centers a little bit more. To me, I probably like Exum a little bit more. The data likes him a little bit more, and I'm kind of just defaulting to that. But I don't know if you can really. I don't know if you can go wrong. It's just I think it's a matter of being more correct here. And so that's my struggle.
Yeah, I mean, it's a not a tough matchup against Memphis, and it's like I'm actually surprised that he's only 9% owned. I did expect him to come in a little higher, even though his price is up. It might just be sticker shock. People don't want to play him, but he projects really well. I mean, 9.7 OF index is pretty significant too.
I will say, I haven't played on Yahoo in probably over 2 years. That's where I started out NBA DFS. So I was like, I used to do pretty well, but I kind of wanted to enter a lineup today because those two are crazy. I've never seen the ratings that high for Yahoo value. I don't think I recall 24 point. I mean, that's just. I know this is a DraftKings FanDuel stream, but I just want to point that out. That is crazy.
Yeah, I used to play on Yahoo more as well. It's so hard to juggle even two sites, having the third one in there. But back to your question at the beginning of the stream about like contest selection. I mean, to be honest, Yahoo is probably, if you're only playing one site, Yahoo's probably the best one if you're playing with a smaller-ish bankroll.
Yeah, I agree. And it could just be one of those situations where maybe you guys are playing FanDuel and DraftKings and something like this pops up and you just want to get some exposure. It's not terrible because they probably, on a 13 game slate, they probably won't be too high owned. Like that is a clear cut value, easy plug and plays there.
Yeah.
Interesting on DraftKings as well. Like you can play Exum as point guard and forward. You kind of mentioned that. Does that shift how much you like who you would want to get to at all? Like where Derek Jones, you're forced to play him in power forward or small forward. Exum, you get a little bit more leeway, at least on DraftKings.
I will say small forward is typically the hardest position for me to fill on both sites. And just scrolling through my lineups, I mean, yeah, I have Derek Jones Jr., Dante Exum, Michael Porter Jr., a little bit of Bojan Bogdanovic. And so, yeah, I just I don't have any lineups just scrolling through with Dante Exum in the point guard spot. So it's definitely significant.
So which Bogdanovic do you want to be on more, Atlanta or Detroit? They're both coming in as pretty good values. They're both basically the same price tag. I'll answer it first for you. I like Detroit better, just given the matchup and given the fact that I think he's going to have a higher usage rate, but I'm actually very curious as to what your thoughts are there.
No, I completely agree with you. Even with that huge ownership disparity, it's just Trae Young is back in today, and I didn't even want to get to Bogdanovic when Trae Young was out on the last slate. So I definitely am not going to want to get to him when Trae Young is in at the higher price. And I think Bojan has the higher ceiling. Maybe it's something where Bogdan is going to hit his like medium-ish ceiling a little bit more often, but I just think Bojan has more opportunity.
And then just looking at, I'm really shocked that Kawhi Leonard is pulling in as a good value, really on both sides, but more specifically on DraftKings. He's projected to get 37 minutes in a game that could be a blowout. Is there any concern blowout-wise, or is he kind of a decent pay up? I kind of call these shoulder shrug plays where if you end up on him, you're trying to find some salary, you're okay with it?
Yeah, I mean, 13.5 spread, that's definitely blowout territory. And I am kind of like 14% is not high, but it is a little bit higher than you would expect for Kawhi. And I wonder how much that has to do with how well he did in the previous game. Didn't he put up like 50 plus? And so I don't mind it. I mean, Portland's an easy team to take advantage of, and we've seen Kawhi Leonard get there, even if he loses that last fourth quarter rotation. But I think we haven't gotten to guards yet, but I'm playing a lot of Luka and SGA today, and so I'm not hitting this mid range as much.
I gotcha. So I was going to ask you about Caleb Martin. That's kind of mid-range as well. Any love for him at all? He had a really good game in the last game. Also gets that good matchup against Charlotte. Or is he too priced up now?
I mean, it is a great matchup against Charlotte, and he's coming in with basically no ownership on DraftKings. But again, if he was like 5,500, then he'd be definitely more owned. But I think that we saw it during the playoffs last year, like during that finals run where he just looked like a completely different player, right? And he was chalk a couple slates ago, and I didn't even realize he was chalk because I didn't play him at all, but he had another great game. I think he had two in a row. I don't think that we really have to hit him at this price here.
I will say Miami is kind of fascinating because Jimmy Butler can just have these random games where he takes the back seat, which he has kind of done the last two games, and then someone like Caleb Martin can go off. Hawk it goes deep. I mean, Heisman is solid as well, so like it wouldn't be shocking if Robinson goes off as well. I don't know. I guess what are your thoughts on Jimmy Butler? Because to me, I thought I was going to be getting to him at the start of the day, and then really not at all as the day has progressed because it feels too risky. But at that same point, I would almost maybe want to set a rule if I was max entering to be like, if I don't have Jimmy Butler, I want one of Martin or Robinson or maybe the other Robinson as well.
I will say that like on a day with so many games where we're likely to get some news later, I think Malik Monk is a pretty big piece of news in the second to last game. and we've talked about this before. I think we kind of want to avoid the values in the first couple of games, other than Nick Richards. And
Yep.
if we're playing the studs like Jimmy Butler, Joel Embiid, even like a Kyle Kuzma, I think that's better than playing even anyone in the mid range. And so Orlando Robinson, like I like his ceiling, but I'm not getting there as much as I thought I would.
I like that answer. That's a good call. So I do need to get your thoughts on Isaiah Joe. He's guard forward eligible, but he's pulling in as the highest owned forward right now. That's second highest owned, I guess, Jabari Smith. What are your kind of thoughts on him? Because he is pretty cheap. Minutes wise, he might get a bump if the game's a blowout, 12-point spread, 12.5-point spread, projects to get 25 minutes. Is that really what people are chasing there right now, including the price tag?
Yeah, Isaiah Joe chalk. I mean, I actually thought he was going to come in higher owned. So 21% at 4K, that seems fine. I was going to avoid it. I thought he was going to be like mega chalk today, but we just have so many values. The ownership's going to be spread out. But I hate playing Isaiah Joe chalk. And it's, he is scoring dependent in the sense that if he doesn't score, a bunch of real points, he's just not going to get there. But he's a really, really good 3-point shooter. And so it would not be surprising to see him hit 5-6 threes tonight.
To me, I think it's more you could put him in there with the hopes that you're going to pivot off of him, hoping that more value opens up, kind of to your point earlier, where you kind of just fade the early games, simply hoping for better value. That's kind of how I feel like with him. Like, I don't want to play him unless I really have to, unless no other value opens up.
Yeah, I like that. And, it's different positions, and maybe we don't have that many good guard value plays, but just looking at like, would I rather pay down at guard or pay down at center? I think we have way more really good pay down centers where Isaiah Joe's just not necessary. And sorting by ownership, I'm really surprised Jabari Smith is the highest projected owned forward on DraftKings, and he's pretty close to the top on FanDuel. That's really surprising. Like I mentioned, it's a great matchup against San Antonio for Sengun, but 6,200, I don't know. It kind of feels like he's unnecessary. I don't even know if I got him in my run.
It's weird because you look at his game log and he just hasn't been consistent on each category. Like rebounds, he had a good game rebounding the past 2 games, no points. It's just, I mean, maybe that's just the position that he's playing right now, where Sengun we can trust, Van Fleet to an extent we can trust, and then Smith is just a little bit too young to trust, maybe.
Yeah, I got 0 Jabari Smith in my 40 lineups on DraftKings. So I'm like, I hope he comes in high owned, because I'm not going to be getting there.
I mean, just sorting by like the price, like we got Bay right there, who I actually want your thoughts on because FanDuel, he's a pretty good value projection wise, and he's only pulling in 2%. But like just real quickly, he's someone at least on DraftKings you could pivot to off of a chalky one. Duncan Robinson, I do think he has somewhat of a ceiling. Jaquez maybe, but probably don't need to get there. Stewart's I thought would be higher owned. PJ Washington has had some good games. Like there's other players that you can get to. But yeah, let me get your thoughts on Bay because 5.9 on FanDuel, only 2% coming in as one of the better values at forward. I'm very interested in kind of maybe, is that a good leverage spot?
So when DeAndre Hunter was questionable, and like I've been pumping up DeAndre Hunter all season, he's barely delivered. He has a couple times, but with him out today, Sadiq Bey, I mean, he's just, with the couple days off DraftKings had, they really priced players more appropriately, and I don't think they were expecting DeAndre Hunter to miss when they released his salary. But Sadiq Bey, even at the low ownership, it's just another play in this like no man's land 6K range, and he's a fine GPP play if you get there a couple times. But I'm not terribly interested in him with Trae Young back in the lineup, especially.
I do think he feels somewhat safe, but at the same time, to your point, like we could probably get similar production cheaper.
Yes, exactly. Like he's probably going to hit his medium outcome more often than a lot of the other guys that are more highly owned. But I question the ceiling. And if we're going to go down to the cheap centers today, we really want to hit ceiling outcomes from most of the rest of our lineup.
So we got a couple of questions coming in here, guys. So we'll just touch on that. So we got Courtney Parker pretty much asking, do you need to go 5% or lower for your different lines today?
So one thing that I think that a lot of DFS players focus on too much, especially in NBA, is ownership and forcing in low owned plays. Like I don't force in a low owned play just because they're low owned. I naturally like guys that end up without that ownership. And especially on a 13 game slate, I don't even look at ownership. It doesn't matter as long as you're not playing like just sorting by DK percent, FanDuel percent, and just playing a lineup from the top of the chalk. I really don't think you have to worry about ownership. It's going to be so spread out today that as long as, like I said, yeah, just don't play all the chalk. And I don't think you need to like worry about making sure you have a 5% guy. It's just, if you have a bunch of guys in the low teens, there's just so many possible combinations today that I wouldn't really focus on it at all.
I would say naturally building hand lineups, you're going to be unique, and even mass entering, you're still like, you're going to be unique enough. So definitely interesting there.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't want to say avoid all the chalk, but we've seen a lot of times on these huge slates, if the chalk goes off, sure, the top lineups, their total ownership is going to be crazy, but a lot of times the winner is just playing a bunch of contrarian guys and getting lucky in the same lineup. So
then we did have another comment from Barry Jones, pretty much saying Detroit rotation has been all over the place. Yes, it has. They've been frustrating.
It's like a disaster, man. I've seen people like talking bad about Monty. Like, man, he should be sending Devin Booker and KD some flowers for getting him this contract. I don't know what he's doing, because it's like, it's okay to lose games, but you're not developing the young players. You're not instilling confidence. Like, the point of these bad seasons is to make sure your young core is good for later. Like, look at the Thunder. I mean, they lost games, but their rotations made sense and their young players developed and they're good. In Detroit, like, what are we doing with Asar Thompson and Jaden Ivey coming off the bench? And it makes no sense. I have no idea what Detroit's doing. I will say it's a really good game environment. They're playing the fastest team in the NBA. But yeah, it's kind of a mess other than Cade Cunningham and probably Bojan. I don't think anyone's minutes are secure at all today.
No, it's kind of sucks. They need to make a trade, it seems like. Real quickly to the Monte stuff. When the Bucks won the championship, I was so like wondering why he felt the need to come in and like congratulate the Bucks. It was just like the most random moment I can remember as like a Bucks fan. Really, I'm like, why? You're a nobody. Honestly, like, he got so much hype that year for no reason. I'm just like, this is weird, dude. I don't know. It's like he wanted to be a part of the moment so bad. It's just weird.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Like, I don't know if Monty Williams is a good coach. I'll say I think he's a fantastic human being.
Oh, yes.
But coaching NBA games is I have no idea what they're trying to accomplish over there right now.
And maybe that's the problem. He doesn't know either. So we'll see. Let's look at the guards here. So ownership wise, again, Isaiah Joe, we already kind of mentioned that. It is pretty spread out, though. So, like Seth Curry, some people are hoping for an upside game. You got Carson Wallace there. Again, probably that game being a potential blowout. Desmond Bane, hoping for a ceiling game against Dallas. He has been kind of a safer play. Tim Hardaway Jr., small forward, guard eligible, pulling in some chalk. Josh Giddey. Don't probably want to get to him. 10% owned. He's been a little bit too hit or miss. No Josh Giddey jokes, please, guys, in the comments. And then that's pretty much it. I mean, the ownership is very much spread out. And then I'll just look at FanDuel as well. Pretty much spread out. Fred VanVleet, Caruso kind of pulling in his chalk.
I will say the reason that Giddey, Joe, and Wallace are popping today is because Lou Dort is out. And so there's more minutes to go around. And I initially checked out. So I go through every team and my initial feelings, I'll adjust players. And I initially checked Case and Wallace out of my player pool. And then I look at the model and he's showing up as a top value. So I'm like, all right, I guess I'll put him back in my player pool and play him a little bit. But I mean, top value on the model, I wish I understood why 26 projected minutes, his usage isn't that high. They still have SGA and Holmgren. And Josh Giddey, like, his usage is supposed to be high, but again, like, he has off the court stuff going on and he's just been bad. On the previous slate, I talked about whatever team, I wish I could remember which team it was, but they completely ignored him on offense. When the Thunder were on offense, they just doubled whoever had the ball. And then when the Thunder were on defense, they just passed the ball to whoever Josh Giddey was guarding and completely attacked him. And so he has no minute security, and it just blows my mind because he's supposed to be the second best player on this team. But I will say his price on DraftKings is really good, and his ownership is not high, so I don't mind getting there.
I mean, he's still getting the shot attempts up, just needs to start making some shot attempts. Maybe he does get a little bit more run if it's a blowout still, because he hasn't been getting the closing out minutes regardless. So I don't know, maybe that happens, but yeah, maybe gets a little bit more minutes. I would say Carson Wallace is somewhat interesting at that price tag. Like I kind of mentioned with, who Who was the 4K play that I didn't like?
That was
Was it Isaiah Joe?
yeah, Isaiah Joe.
I think I'd actually rather is Carson Wallace a little bit yeah, a little bit lower owned, isn't he? Yes, I'd rather get to Carson Wallace, I think, than him at a slightly cheaper price tag. Just
I mean, to be honest, I don't really like either of them.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's just that Isaiah Joe has the ability to pop off for 5-6 threes, and
yeah.
for Case and Wallace to get there, I mean, I haven't watched as much Thunder as I would have liked because they're like the third best team in the NBA or something right now. But I think that Case and Wallace just kind of has to get that steal block variance and then
Mhm.
get extra peripheral stats because I don't see any scenario in which he's going to put up 20 real life points.
That's true. That's true. It's ugly. I mean, the other guard that we have at that same price tag is Seth Curry, also kind of shot dependent. And I don't know if we can really bank on the minutes even being there for him. I think they were the last time Grant Williams was out. And we look at his game log 18, 19, 36. Obviously, if he gets over 20 or so minutes, that should be a good one. We have him projected to get 25. Is that a pretty good? I mean, he's pretty chalk regardless, but like, all right, let's do it. Joe, Wallace, or Curry. Which chalk would you rather eat? Which chalk is the safest?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't even. I don't even want to throw out an answer. I'm not confident in any of them. I would say Seth Curry's probably the least safe, but again, kind of like Joe, he can come in and pop off for a few threes. Yeah. I think the game he went off though, Dante Exum wasn't playing either. Exum and Kyrie were out, or maybe Exum and Luka were out.
Yeah.
And so Seth Curry's ownership is actually really surprising to me. I'm not sure other sites probably have some weird projection for him, but the model is saying no, and it's not saying no, but it's saying we don't love it. So I don't know. I think I'm probably going to end up getting to Joe and Wallace more than Seth, but they're all coming in pretty similar ownership. I don't even know if I'm going to be with the field on any of them, though.
I'm pretty sure that game that he went off, it was Luka, not Kyrie.
Okay.
Sorting it by oath index, we got Luka. So I kind of mentioned I'd rather pay up for Luka than Embiid. Talk me off of that take. Tried to talk me off of that take. I'm just curious as to what is the path in which, given the guard value that we have and the center value, where does not being on Luka work out?
I'm not going to talk you off that take. That's exactly
I want you to, though. I want you to.
It's just like like the thing that we were talking about in the previous segment. I'd rather play the cheap centers than play the cheap guards today. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Embiid can pop off for 70. It's a fantastic matchup for him. But Luka can also pop off for 70. And I just find myself paying up at guard more for Luka and SGA specifically. And so I'm playing a lot of 2-center lineups on DraftKings with both cheap centers, and it's just. I mean, even with Embiid, it's not hard to fit any of these guys in, but I'm more confident in the cheap centers than I am in the cheap guards.
Okay, that makes sense. Looking at it right now, though, pricing wise, like Garland is sticking out like a sore thumb, 7.7, 7.8, but only coming in at 2% ownership. Is that like a massive leverage spot? Like if you wanted to go a fair and balanced approach, is he kind of a very good starting point?
I don't know. I might be biased, but I am actually never excited to play Darius Garland, even when Donovan Mitchell misses. And we have a lot of leverage spots today, and he's been playing well. But it's just if we're playing Darius Garland at 7,700, we really need a ceiling game. And for some reason, Orlando is really, really good this year. You know, not the fastest pace of play. They're not the slowest either, but yeah, I'm not really targeting anyone on Cleveland today. I think I got a couple of shares of Max Strus, but other than him, I'm just not really getting to much of that game at all.
I'm wondering if it's his performance last time out against him where he went off. I don't know if Mitchell was out in that game or not. I can't remember, but interesting there. Kobe White as well. I'm kind of curious as to your takes on there. He's definitely priced up, has been going off. It's a pretty good matchup going against the Bucks with Levine still out. He's projected to get 38 minutes. You know, that's crazy. Only 2% owned for a guy that has shown a pretty massive ceiling lately at a kind of low price tag, given how well he's played in a good matchup at a low ownership, high minutes. I had him as a starting point along with Luka. Again, talk me off of it.
Unfortunately, again, I can. I think Kobe White's great. This is Kobe White's team. Somehow the Bulls,
Right.
somehow he's the best player on the Bulls. It might be a sticker shock, and if it was a shorter slate, I'd be a lot more interested in him. He's still in this kind of no man's land of salary, but at 2% ownership, he is a guy that I'm going to try to force in a few percent in my lineups.
I think that's the biggest thing to me is how low owned he is. Like, again, we don't need to go out of our way to really gain leverage. That's just going to naturally happen. But I typically do like, let's say 6 lineups or so now. I'm probably going to have him in 4. Which is pretty overweight.
Oh no, I'm pretty extreme with my ownerships when I'm on a guy who's low owned, and so I love that take. And point guards against Milwaukee is a thing, so it's a really good spot.
Yeah, it's just the minutes too. It's like how many times can you get a guy that's been going off that much, low ownership with that many minutes? It's pretty crazy. I mean, really, Portland maybe. Like, I guess let's talk about Simons here because I don't think we love it, but he has been playing pretty well, and he was pretty low owned and chalk. Previous slate went off in that game, 36 minutes for second game back, 37 minutes in that game. Almost. I mean, he's averaging basically 40 points per game over the last 2 games, more than that. Do you have any love for him?
Absolutely. So I don't think we have any kind of news on Malcolm Brogdon other than he's questionable. And so I'm kind of just banking on him being out. But even with Brogdon in that first half, when Brogdon left the game, I think Simons took close to 30 shots or maybe 30 shots. And that's just, I don't really need to hear anything else.
I think Brogdon just helps like the team. And so like it just would keep the game a little bit closer for a little bit longer. Like I don't see him being a hurt or help really at all too much.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Simons is going to take his shots no matter who's on the court with him. And so it's not a huge difference maker. I would say it's probably going to make Simons' ownership go up. But it's really interesting that none of the guards anyway, are pulling any ownership at all. And Shaedon Sharpe on FanDuel at 7,600. I mentioned him on the last slate, and he came in actually low owned even on the night slate. And he was going through a rough patch. I think he looks a lot better recently. And so Simons and Shaedon Sharpe, I'm still going to be pretty interested in today.
Yeah, I mean, Sharpe has just been going off as well, and it just could be a role thing, where he's not the guy. He can be a guy as part of a team. You know what I mean? Like if you ask him to step up into that bigger role, that's just not him. He can't succeed. Yeah, that's pretty crazy right there.
And on Sharpe, we kind of saw this at the end of last season, like when it was his team, when they were just in full-on tank mode, when Dame stopped playing. I don't remember if Simons was in at the very end of last year or not.
No.
But I mean, Sharpe, like he's done this before. It's not anything new. And so, but again, he is again in that no man's land of salary. And so even at 1%, like if I'm making 150, it's hard to get even more than a few shares. Like in my 40 lineups, I don't even know if I'm going to get to him on DraftKings, but I just do want to mention that even in the tough matchup and the huge spread, he's a fine GPP play,
especially on like FanDuel where you can play him small forward and guard eligible at a much cheaper price tag.
Yeah, I think it's all good. For the night slate, I will say that he's probably going to be a low owned play that we should probably try to get to more.
Mm-hmm. I just had to crack my neck. We got some injury news that came in, so let's talk about that. Chris Middleton ruled out. That doesn't change too much. I mean, maybe Malik Beasley, a little bit more usage to him. I'll see if the data updated there, but he had been getting minutes. It makes sense why they would sit him, maybe Bobby Portis a little bit, but it's probably a little bit too thin news-wise, right?
Yeah, so Pat Connaughton is still out. That was the first player I thought of with the Chris Middleton news. I don't think this materially affects anyone because Malik Beasley, like he still has to hit a bunch of threes for him to get there, and the playing time might be more secure now. He's been playing huge minutes. We haven't projected for 35. So I don't hate Malik Beasley as a play. And then I don't know. I wasn't really getting to Giannis or Dame anyway. It doesn't affect them too much though.
I will say like maybe if Marjon Beauchamp was like min price, being guard forward eligible on DraftKings, I would have been a little bit intrigued given the fact that this game could blow out because he would still get run. And honestly, when he's in the blowout run, he can really go off. But I mean, he's coming in as a good value as well. I mean, I could see playing him if he gets 25 minutes and maybe a little bit of blowout run. I think I'd rather be on him than those other guards that we were mentioning earlier at a lower ownership, no ownership.
Beauchamp?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he's. I don't think he would start, but I guess he could if he ends up starting. I wonder if the field is going to get to him more, and I think it's probably incorrect, even though it's a little bit more minutes. Like
Mhm.
I kind of feel like he's the same play off the bench at lower ownership. So
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That's very interesting. And we got news. John Collins is out. To me, that I just hate that honestly because Utah is already a headache. That just makes it a little bit more of a headache. Do you have any initial thoughts for this?
I'm pretty sure Walker Kessler was inserted back into the starting lineup
Mhm.
when they played. Maybe it was the Clippers on the last time.
Mhm.
It'll be interesting to see who's starting now. Is it going to be Simone Fontecchio or maybe they? I don't. They haven't really wanted to start Olynyk. I don't think they're going to
No,
start Yurt 7 next to Kessler. Is Kessler out tonight as well? He's not showing
he
up in the
is.
model.
He is. He's out.
Okay, so Yurt 7's probably starting. I mean, Yurt 7, he's all right. Another cheap center that we're interested in playing, and Kelly's probably in line for more minutes. Baji, this team is gross, man. I don't want to play anybody, but we're probably gonna have to find. I don't think we have to find it. I don't know. This is a terrible, terrible game now against OKC. Really tough matchup. One player we didn't mention though, Chet Holmgren was showing up very
He
highly in
was.
the value, and
Mhm.
this is. I don't think John Collins out like makes him a better play than he already was, but Holmgren on the other side. If we are playing a mid-range center, I think that's the one I would prefer.
Yeah, we have him projected still get 30 minutes. That should be enough. And it's kind of crazy just updating the value for the whole slate. Lopez, fourth best value now. Marjan Beauchamp, like sixth best. Giannis, a good value now as well. So it just got a little bit harder. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's I mean these huge slates are always tough. I thought it was going to be kind of fairly straightforward, but now we have to see what Martin Beauchamp's ownership updates to, and Brooke
Yeah.
Lopez again. It's just like I don't know if we want to play that many of these mid-range centers.
I agree. Let's try to do a quick kind of sample build. I know we got to get out of here. We have the Discord chat going live pretty much right now, but let's try to do it because it is an interesting slate. Where is your starting point? Your absolute gung ho and need to start there.
I think the easiest thing to do is put in Mike Muscala
Okay.
at center.
We just got news in the comments that he's starting as well. So
Okay.
I think that does help.
Yeah, just a 3K center who can hit threes. I mean, it's really hard to avoid him. He's currently my most exposed player. I don't think that's going to change in the next 20 minutes. I will say that we got the Pistons starting lineup, and thank God they're starting Isaiah Stewart at center.
Are they good? Good.
Yeah, and Asar Thompson's back in the starting lineup, and his minutes have been awful recently, but he's a little bit too cheap now that he's back in the starting lineup. So that's not a starting point for our
Yeah.
dummy build,
No,
but I
no,
just
no.
want to point out Asar Thompson, really, really good play if his ownership stays. I don't even care what his ownership is. He's a good play either way.
Yeah, it's just you're betting on the minutes being there and really Bogdanovich not soaking up too much ownership. Like it's a great pivot off of a chalky Bogdanovich.
And Killian Hayes back in the starting lineup too. I was getting to so much Killian Hayes, and I'm like, why am I playing this much Killian Hayes today? I wonder if I'm going to get him even a little bit more.
Is he starting at the point? Or
Cunningham, Hayes, Asar Thompson, Bogdanovich, and Stewart for the
okay.
Pistons. So it's disgusting, man.
Yeah. Again, we're probably just staying away from them. For me, I think a starting point. I think it's still Luka, but now I don't know. I kind of like the ownership leverage on some of those guards, like I mentioned, Kobe White. I don't know. It's just I'll still go Luka here, but it feels more thin. No.
Yeah, I still like Luca, but I just ran a new and like I still have to go make adjustments, whatever. But Embiid is actually still the pay up I'm getting to the most over Luca.
Okay, so do you want to do Embiid? Maybe both of them, or is there?
I'm wondering if we could just go full on stars and scrubs and play both.
Let's try it. I'm going to go Beauchamp then as a value.
Yep.
What's weird is that we do have Brooke popping up as a good value now with Middleton out. So like, don't love that because you could easily play him and potentially get 40, which is basically what the data is telling us. So I don't love that. But who would you go small forward wise? Kind of maybe more value wise.
Well, on my rerun, my top two on small forwards are Beauchamp and Dante Exum, followed by Bojan Bogdanovic. So
Okay, we'll go.
Yeah, it's getting gross.
Power forward wise, it's definitely very interesting because like the Utah stuff does open up maybe some potential value. I don't think we need to go out of our way to play any of them. Is there anyone here that you would rather play power forward wise, like priority wise?
I'm wondering if Jericho Sims makes sense at 3K at the power forward position, just because so we don't have to go full value. We can still play one other mid range guy, maybe Dante Exum or I don't know, Bobby Portis or something like that. Bogdanovich maybe.
Yeah, I don't mind that. We'll try that.
And we did get Anthony Edwards ruled out, so it's just
No, we did not get that. What do you mean? That honestly changes. I would rather play Gobert, I think, for sure. And Towns. The usage goes up an insane amount.
Yeah, we could get to one of those guys over Embiid if it makes the lineup work a little bit better. Then we can probably even play one more stud on top of that.
I was thinking honestly both of them if we could go Towns and Gobert. I don't know if that'll work. No, not exactly. Maybe.
I would probably want to go one or the other, but
Okay.
I mean, this is already automatically a contrarian build, so I don't hate it.
Oh god. Just this
4,200 at guard. We got Seth Curry, Case and Wallace, or Isaiah Joe. Take your pick.
Exactly. It was Wallace was the better of them, right? Data wise, right now at least. We'll go Wallace. So, fun day.
We're gonna have a good time. Well, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Oh gosh. All right. So yeah, we got to get out of here, guys. It was a fun video. Thank you guys for being here. We got the Discord chat going live right now. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Just Muscala's confirmed starting, so no problem there. Embiid's confirmed starting. And then Jaden McDaniels has a game time decision for Minnesota, so maybe that's just another wrench in the system, whatever. But I think we pretty much hit on everything that's relevant.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, guys. Jump in the Discord chat. Link to that is going to be in the description below. Thank you, guys.